Greetings, everyone. I am Jason McClellan, Open Minds News correspondent, and this is your Open Minds News Brief for Monday, November 7th, 2011. Well, in September, we talked about a documentary that will be released in 2012 titled Revelations of the Mayans, 2012 and Beyond. The filmmakers claim this documentary will provide evidence that the Mayans had contact with extraterrestrials. There's been a development with this story. According to an article published by The Wrap at the end of October, the filmmakers released a photograph they claim is, quote, evidence of a pre-Mayan alien civilization. The film's producer, Raul Julia Levy, released the photo to The Wrap, which shows a large carved head in the jungle that allegedly was taken in southern Guatemala in the 1930s. A letter from archaeologist Hector E. Mejia reportedly accompanied the photo. Mejia claims the head sculpture in the photo, quote, dates back to between 3500 and 5000 BC and is evidence of a superior civilization unlike any known to have lived on Earth. He points out that the elongated cranium and fine characteristics of the sculpture are not consistent with pre-Hispanic races of America, and therefore must have been, quote, created by an extraordinary and superior civilization with awesome knowledge of which there is no record of existence on this planet. Julia Levy claims that this photo is just one of several pieces of evidence that he's going to present in this documentary, and Julia Levy also claims that Stephen Hawking is participating in the film. The filmmaker provided The Wrap with a quote he claims is from Hawking that will be used in the film. Hawking allegedly stated, quote, I warn humanity that aliens are out there. Just because the aliens were friends with the Mayans doesn't mean they are our friends. Humans should avoid contact with aliens at all costs. Now, this statement is certainly reminiscent of Hawking's grim statements from 2010, cautioning humanity against trying to contact extraterrestrials. Now, this statement from Hawking hasn't been confirmed that it actually came from Hawking. People have tried to contact Hawking's people to verify that information, but no response has been received on that. And this is an interesting photo. It could be explained many ways. It could just be an interesting sculpture, but it could indeed be an indication that there was extraterrestrial contact between aliens and the Mayans. But this documentary is interesting. They've made a lot of claims that say the Mexican government and the Guatemalan government and other governments are participating in the film, releasing, previously unreleased materials, artifacts and things that have been locked away and never shown to the public. And they claim that these things are going to, in fact, prove that aliens and Mayans did interact. And so the movie just started production this month in November, and it's due out in 2012. So I'm sure if the publicity that they pushed out so far, even before they began production, is any indication, I'm sure we'll see much more coming out, and I'm sure this photo is just kind of a teaser and many more earth-shattering pieces of evidence I'm sure they'll put forward. So any developments happen with that, we'll let you know. In other news, a woman in Santa Fe, New Mexico, was outside her house taking pictures of the moon on the night of Saturday, October 29th. And it was just after sunset, and having snapped a few photos with her Nikon D500 camera, she went inside to look at the photos she had taken, and she noticed a blue light in her photos that appeared to move around the moon. Sure enough, when she went back out and took more photos, she saw the blue light again in her photos. So she looked at the photos and thought this some blue thing dancing around the moon was there that she couldn't see when she was taking the pictures. So her curiosity was piqued, and she decided to take more photos. So she went out and she took a photo approximately every minute. And one of the photos shows mysterious green lights in the sky, and the witness described them as resembling a top, like a toy. And the green lights appear with the blue light in most of the photos. And according to the witness, the blue light moved around, which reminded her of an aurora. After taking a few more photos, she noticed the green lights were no longer in the sky. So what she did was transferred the photos from her camera to her iPad so she could view them on a larger screen than just the small monitor on the back of her camera. And sure enough, when she did this, she could see that the green lights were gone from the sky. But she could tell that these green lights were now on the ground in her yard behind her house. Well, lights that a photographer didn't notice at the time of shooting a photo, but then later notices when reviewing photos. That can indicate a couple of things. Sometimes it could indicate lens flare, and it could also indicate reflection that happens, when people take photos from inside a car, inside a house, through a window. That can cause some interesting reflections to take place. But the reflection most likely isn't the case with these photos, because according to the photographer, she was outside when she took these photos, so there would be no window, no glass to cause that reflection. And the apparent movement of the lights in this case, and the multiple colors captured in the photos, might indicate something besides simple lens flare. But there's certainly an interesting series of photos, and special thanks to the photographer Michelle Tapia for sending those to Open Minds. We really appreciate it. And they're certainly mysterious. I mean, these green lights have a strange shape, but with night photography and lights in general, it's difficult to make out what an actual shape is because of motion blur and the different aspects of the camera and the lens used, trying to focus on a lit object. And lens flare produces some strange things in photography. So it's certainly a possibility. Also, when filters are used on a lens, that additional glass can cause all sorts of light issues to happen and interesting things to be produced in the photo. But we have no idea what this is. I mean, there's no way to tell, and it would be great if the photographer could take additional photos on a different night, on any night, and see if she gets similar results, because that could indicate that it's something with the camera and the light interacting with the lens. But the objects that appear in these photos are pretty unknown. We can't definitely say what they are or what they aren't. So thanks, Michelle, for sending those in. And if any of you have photos of interesting things you've captured that you'd like to send in to be possibly used on our website in a story or shown on this show, you can certainly send those to us. You can go to our website at openminds.tv, and we have a contact form there, or you can send them to us directly through email with the email address contact@openminds.tv. In other news, and this made many headlines, and it's still making headlines. It was big in conventional media, just regular news publications, as well as the sporting world. Many magazines, newspapers, sports blogs, etc. went nuts with this story, and they're still writing about it today. At least 3 UFOs zoomed through the sky during the NBC broadcast of the New Orleans Saints versus Indianapolis Colts football game on October 23rd in New Orleans. Following a commercial break, NBC's cameras focused on New Orleans' St. Louis Cathedral, and at this point, the first UFO zips through the sky at an incredible rate of speed. The next light appears approximately 5 seconds later, which is followed by another light, another 5 seconds later. Now, looking at the video frame by frame, the UFOs appear to be rod or cigar-shaped, with multiple lights, and similar objects have been captured by many people, and probably most notably, Jose Escamilla has captured these objects, and he's accumulated hundreds of videos of these things shooting through the sky. And many people say that a lot of these objects are most likely bugs, insects flying very close to the lens, and there are lights or other small objects either above or below or both from these long objects. And what those can be in many cases are the wings of the insect flying by, and the camera trying to capture that fast movement produces that interesting result. Not saying that that's the case in all of these instances. I mean, there are many things that we see in videos that shoot by very quickly, and it doesn't mean that they are bugs. But when there are certain indications that can give the strong possibility that they are bugs. Well, in this case, as Lee Spiegel from the Huffington Post pointed out, one little frame of the video may be the one little problem that could rule out the insect theory. And what he's talking about here is, again, in frame-by-frame analysis of the video, the objects pretty clearly do move behind the towers of the cathedral, which indicates we're not looking at just a simple bug here, something small. This is a larger object that's actually at a distance from the camera, flying behind the towers of the cathedral. So, looking at the video even beyond that, it's also apparent that this NBC video is a time-lapse video. Now, time-lapse video is when the original footage is captured at a lower frame rate. So when it's played back at normal speed, it appears to be much faster. And we know this is a time-lapse video because if you watch the video, you can see that the clock on the tower, the hands on the clock, move very quickly. And there's also another indication. As the video progresses, there is a lower third, an advertisement for an upcoming television program that appears at the bottom of the screen. And when that goes away, you can see the traffic moving on the street in the background, and that traffic is zipping by very quickly. So that paired with the rapid movement of the clock, that gives you the indication that this is a time-lapse video. And time-lapse video is fairly common, especially in sporting events. They like to use it when they come back from commercials. It gives it sort of a cinematic effect. So it's pretty common, and that's what we're looking at here. So knowing that we're looking at a larger object, and we're looking at a time-lapse video telling us the object was moving considerably slower than it appears in the video, that gives us a strong possibility that the objects in the sky are airplanes. And that makes sense because there are at least three airports, in the near vicinity to the football stadium, within a 10-mile radius, and one of those is a military airbase, but this is probably commercial airline, and evidence of that is most likely going to come out very soon because from what I've been told, the photographer who took this footage for NBC and the NFL has come forward and said, you know, when I saw all these media outlets reporting on this, I felt bad and felt I had to come forward and let you know that I have the evidence that shows that these were airplanes. I saw the airplanes flying, coming in for a landing as I was shooting this footage, because this footage, he has a pretty elaborate setup that is all computerized and takes 45 minutes or so to complete this 30 seconds worth of footage that is the end product. But he does have the original footage, and that is going to come out soon, and when it does, we will certainly bring that to you. So we'll watch that story as it develops, but we can pretty conclusively say it was airplanes. It was a fascinating video to watch, but as soon as we could determine that the video was time-lapsed and the object was moving considerably slower, that made it less mysterious. So we can nearly conclusively say the objects were airplanes. When we see that video, that will conclusively tell us, and we will bring that video to you as well. Well, in other news, the White House has finally responded to the UFO ET petitions. That happened over the weekend, and as you've more than likely heard about it or read about it, every media outlet has been picking up on this story and going nuts with it. But the White House did officially respond to two of the UFO extraterrestrial petitions on their We the People section of the White House website. One of the petitions called on the White House to, quote, immediately disclose the government's knowledge of and communications with extraterrestrial beings. The other petition sought formal acknowledgement of, quote, an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race, end quote. Both petitions were created on September 22nd, 2011, but of the two, the latter petition received nearly 6,700 more signatures, totaling 12,078. Phil Larson, who works on space policy and communications at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, responded to these two petitions with the following statement. The U.S. government has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet or that an extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race. In addition, there is no credible information to suggest that any evidence is being hidden from the public eye. Larson added, however, that doesn't mean that the subject of life outside our planet isn't being discussed or explored. In fact, there are a number of projects working toward the goal of understanding if life can or does exist off Earth. The examples he provided are SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, NASA's Kepler mission, and the Mars Science Laboratory. Stephen Bassett of the Paradigm Research Group is the individual who created the petition that asked for the formal acknowledgement of extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. And according to MSNBC, a response by a, quote, low-level staffer isn't what Bassett had in mind. He was certainly expecting more from the White House. And he reportedly plans to begin a new petition campaign. And the White House has said that's okay. He can certainly create a new petition. But they've also said that if it's about the similar subject asking for the same thing, the response is also going to be the same. So when We the People launched, the petition needed to receive at least 5,000 signatures within 30 days to be eligible for a response from the White House. And both of the previously mentioned petitions achieve that goal, and they got the response. But due to the greater than expected activity on We the People, the White House has amended the terms of participation, requiring new petitions to reach 25,000 signatures within 30 days. So Bassett and others are going to have an even more difficult time reaching that number of signatures. And personally, it's my opinion that I think the White House responded much more professionally than I thought they would. I thought they might dismiss it or joke about the subject, and they didn't. They gave a professional response, and whether or not it's the response that you wanted or I wanted, they did deliver a response, as opposed to some of the other petitions like marijuana and things like that, where they just outright dismissed. They did respond to this, and they responded to it in a serious manner. However, the issue I took with the response is they made a statement, something to the effect of saying most scientists or many scientists feel that the chances of finding intelligent extraterrestrial life are slim. And what they failed to mention are the many scientists who believe that the likelihood is very great. And in fact, there are many scientists actively participating in the search and taking the subject very seriously. Astrobiology and astrophysics are huge fields right now, and the major research institutions are heavily involved in this. In Arizona State University here in Arizona, with Professor Paul Davies, they're kind of leading the charge. They're very major players in astrobiology and doing extremely great things. So for the White House to say, put out this impression that most scientists either aren't interested or don't think our chances are very good of finding anything worthwhile, I think that's misleading and inaccurate. So that's my issue with it. But they did respond, and that's great. But I don't think anyone should keep their hopes up that we're going to hear any more, because frankly I don't think many of us expected the White House to come out and say, "You're right, we were lying. Ha, here's the real information." So they responded. I think, at least from my point of view, we got exactly the response that we were expecting, and perhaps a little more, being that they didn't dismiss it or joke about it. Well, that is it for the news for today. There's so much more news. You can read about all of these stories and so many more at openminds.tv, your source for UFO-related news. I'm Jason McClellan, your Open Minds news correspondent, and you've been briefed.